In this video, we are once again going to release some heavenly scrolls. Guys, we're on this time. We're talking about the Enoch calendar. And look, we've been going through a series of messages to prove the Enoch calendar. Many of you will say, oh, I don't understand it. I'm following this calendar or that calendar. Whether you understand the actual details of the information you're about to see, whether you understand it or not, the thing I want you to get at out of this video is that, look, this calendar is right. Not only that, the details and information in the scripture of the soon return of Jesus Christ is coded in the scripture that we would be on the right time and appointed feast. So, as we've seen before, we have many patterns. We're going to talk about this pattern, and you can see this pattern is the 24 elders. 24 elders in the book of Revelation. They are also called the sons of Zadok. And we're going to see proof and evidence, once again, of the Enoch calendar in Genesis chapter 5. Not only that, proof and evidence of the leap cycle. Many of the people that have followed the Enoch calendar, if you do so over the course of many years, you come to terms with the difficulty of trying to determine the leap cycle. We're going to cover that. So, we will make all the notes and everything available to you in this video. We'll have a document where you can study all this. It's going to take you some study, guys. This is really mind-boggling. It's mind-boggling for me just to try to write this down and communicate this in English. It's just crazy. Here are our notes, and before we get into it, let's do a quick recap. In a previous video, we saw the proof of the Enoch calendar by observing the people in Genesis chapter 5. Enoch, Methuselah, Lamech, Jared, Noah. We saw that the numbers in the genealogy related to time. We saw that they lived a certain number of years, but it said all the days of Enoch were 365 years. So within this genealogy, we convert the years into days. So we convert the years into days. Enoch lived 365 years, which is 365 days. Okay? And there were others as well, 187, 177, 182. These all prove the Enoch calendar. Then what I did is I charted out a genealogy from Adam, you can see, to Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. And this is a genealogy which includes the age they had their son, the year they were born, the number of years they lived, and the year that they died. However, what we saw is what you can see in orange is that the genealogies between Jared, Enoch, Methuselah, Lamech, and Noah held significance in time. Okay? And that's what we're going to talk about in this video. I'll make these part of our notes. All the pages you see in this video, I'll make available in notes. So, our significant numbers are right here. 162, 365, 187, 182, 777, and 177. And inevitably, whenever I do this type of teaching, some of you will ask, why are you talking about the calendar? Why are you talking about this? I just want to be raptured and go to heaven. Well, it's important that you understand that there is a millennial reign of Christ. He's going to reign on the earth 1,000 years. When he does, there's going to be an order, there's going to be a calendar, there's going to be feasts, okay? So it talks about those in Ezekiel chapter 45, 17 through 25. So it tells us about these people, these priests. In verse 8 talks about these princes, okay? And these princes are to institute the calendar and the feasts. So they have the feast, which is Hag, the Hodesh, or new moon, or months, okay? And some of you might say, well, Leland, those are new moons. The calendar is going to be on new moons. Well, we'll see. Ultimately, Christ himself will determine the calendar when he comes. But we're setting everything in order for the preparation of his coming. So, the months, the Sabbaths, the solemnities, which is in Hebrew, the Moedim, also the feasts. So, we have the Feast of Passover, which is also called unleavened bread. So, you don't actually slay the lamb, you have unleavened bread. You have the Feast of Weeks, which you also eat unleavened bread. Normally, you eat bread with leaven, but in the millennium, it's unleavened bread for Passover, unleavened bread for Feast of Weeks, which is also called Shavuot. There will be the Feast of Tabernacles, the 15th day of the 7th month. So all of these feasts will happen. The nations will come, and they will bring their gifts to the Lord Jesus Christ in Jerusalem. Now, these are what it says in Revelation 20. It says, He has made us kings and priests unto God. And that's the millennial reign. So in Hebrew, kings means melech. Okay? Priest is kohanim. All right? But there's also an order of priests called Zadok. That's why we're saying the sons of Zadok, because that's what they're called in Ezekiel. So we have the priests, or the kings, Melech, priest Zadok. So in the millennial kingdom, there is a Melchizedek. These are the sons of Zadok. That is the order of the priesthood. Okay, so this is just the order of priesthood. This is how stuff works, guys. Okay. Now we find this order of the priesthood by the 24 elders in Revelation chapter 4 and verse 2. Okay. That information we find in 1 Chronicles 24, where we have 24 elders. They're called the princes of the sanctuary. And they're called the princes of Elohim, God. Now, they were, in 1 Chronicles 9:25, we get a little more information on them. They were to come every 7 days. And it says from time to time. In verse 24, it says the 4 quarters, which is actually ruachs or spirits, okay? But in 4 quarters, they were porters, east, west, north, and south. So I want you to keep that in mind, the 4 quarters, east, west, south, and north. We'll get into that later. Now, they were responsible for the opening, okay? Opening in Hebrew is the same word as key in Isaiah 22:22, the key of the house of David. So the 24 elders also they are porters. They have the key of the house of David, and this is the order of their priesthood. So the order of their priesthood is that they serve in the temple every 7 days, okay? So if you have the Enoch calendar, I had to make a correction. I'll have a new one, I promise you, but on the calendar, you'll see every 7 days there's an order of priesthood. Now, for time's sake, I was never able to do this before the leap year last year, but what happened is we had to adjust for the leap week, okay? So before, we just had a blank week. There was no priest there. So now we've placed a priest there. That has altered all of our order of priests, okay? So if you have the Enoch calendar and you're interested in this idea and concept, I will have an updated calendar with the priests on it, okay? So you can see they serve every 7 days, every week. Now, let's go back to Genesis chapter 5. So we saw, actually, don't get ahead of me now. Slow down. Yeah. Enoch calendar in Genesis chapter 5. Okay. We have more proof of the Enoch calendar in Genesis chapter 5, additional to what we saw before. Okay. We have 5 people, Jared to Enoch in the genealogy. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. This is Jared's years. This is Enoch's years. And what we did is, if you take the years that they lived, so this is Jared, Jared, Enoch, Methuselah, Lamech, Noah. Add those up, it comes to 4,023. 4,023. But let's remember, there was a conversion of the years that the people lived to days. Okay, now what's the significance of 4,023? Well, the Enoch calendar has 364 days in it. Keep that in mind. Just remember that. Prophetic days are 360. Okay, so that's how we can do 1,260 days, everything else. All right, But if you take 364 days, okay, including the 4 solar days, and you multiply that by 11, okay, you come up with 4,004. Okay, now that is 11 years. So the 11 here relates to years. So over those 11 years, you can have 2 5s. So you got a leap cycle of 5 years. Then you have another leap cycle of 5 years. So those 2 leap cycles are a week, 7 days. You have to add 7 days every 5 years. So then what you do is you take those 2 leap cycles of 7 days, and there's 2 of them, so that's 14. You add that to that. Now you have 4,018 days. But that's not 423. Well, if you take 4,023 days and you subtract 4018, you come up with 5. What's the meaning of 5? It's the number of years. Every 5 leap years, you add 7 days. So coded in all this information is not only the Enoch calendar, but the leap cycle. The leap cycle is every 5 years. We've also proven this in the book of Esther. In the book of Esther, the king sits on the throne 3 years. He holds a feast 180 days, and then he has a feast of 7 days. Those 7 days for all the people is a leap week. So the leap week happens, all right, at a certain period of time, and then the king gets angry. Okay, so that's what happens in the book of Esther, but it actually gives us this schedule of 7 days. Now, Enoch lived 165 days. So if we were to compare these 11 years that we saw, and we compare them to the solar cycle, 365.25 days, we multiply 11, we come up with 7,017.75. So it's very close to our 4,018. It's not, of course, precise, but anyway, this is also what we see there because Enoch lived 365 days. Now, let's remember some of the other numbers we saw. We saw 182. Now, what 182 is, that's 6 months in the Enoch calendar. So 182 is 6 months. 182 days is 6 months in the Enoch calendar. So 182 times 2 is 364. So there's 364 days in a year. So that's what the 182 is. Now there's another number, 187. Now again, we have the Enoch calendar coded throughout this of 364 days. So if we take 364 days, we subtract 187, we come up with 177. We also had a number, 162. Now, what do these mean? Well, we're going to describe that, but let's see where these numbers are coming from. So again, back to our genealogy, we have 162, we have 187, we have 182, and we have 364 minus 187, that's 177. So you can see all these numbers, 365, 162, 187, 182, 177, coded in the genealogy, right? Now, what these numbers mean and what they relate to is the lunar and eclipse cycle that takes place over 6 months. So we saw how there are 182 days in the Enoch calendar over 6 months. Well, the lunar cycle is shorter than that. The lunar cycle is 29 and a half days in a month. So it's short. It's not 182. It's 177. You can see it right here. Now, what we're looking at is this is a menorah. A menorah has 7 lamps. A menorah also has almond blossoms. We determined that these almond blossoms, which are a total of 22 almond blossoms, relate to the eclipses. So, what happens is you have a pattern that we discovered. This is what's described in the scriptures where you have a solar eclipse and then you have a lunar eclipse. Okay? A blood moon. So there was a solar eclipse in July 13th, 2018. 2 weeks later, there's a blood moon, lunar eclipse, July 27, 2018. Okay, this is a pattern that we saw. Now what happens is this pattern goes in a precise sequence. See, these are solar eclipses. See, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. The average of those, you can see it can differ slightly, 178 days, 176 days, 178 days, but the average is 177. So remember we saw the 177 days? Well, that's a leap cycle with the lunar. Now, we also saw, remember how we saw 162 days? Well, what happens is you have 4 of those in a row consecutively, okay? And the fourth one, the duration of time is 162 days. All of this is coded in the genealogy of Genesis 5. I mean, this is just astounding. So that's what the numbers mean, 187. So this is proving everything I'm telling you is totally the truth. It's totally accurate. It is the Enoch calendar, this whole pattern in order and sequence of eclipses. And there are also 22 of these where you have 2 weeks ahead of time. You have, in this example, you have a lunar eclipse. 2 weeks later, you have a solar eclipse. Okay, so you have 1, 2, 3, 4. Then they alternate. Okay, then you have lunar eclipse, 1, 2, 3, 4, consecutive lunar eclipses. Then you have 1, 2, 3, 4 solar eclipses. Then you have 1, 2, 3, 4 lunar eclipses. All of these fall within a 6-month window consecutively for 10.5 years. Okay, remember how we saw 11 years? 11 years is the window of time of these almond blossoms, of these eclipses. Amazing. Let's also mention another thing that is proving that the leap cycle is 5 years. In in Exodus, during the Exodus, there's a survey taking of the men of war, and there was 603, 550 men. Then, after wandering in the wilderness, 40 years, they do another one. There's 601, 730 for war. You subtract those, it's 1,820. 1,820 is the number of days in 5 years in the Enoch calendar. 364 days times 5 is 1,820. Precisely the leap cycle. Next, go back to our almond blossoms. Let's go back to our menorah. And what we did is we found these various eclipses taking place, and we can actually date them back to 2010. And there were significant ones. The reason we're saying these are the almond blossoms, because that's starting with the blood moons in 2014. But then what we did is, once we applied these priests, okay, there's 24 of these priests, and what we're doing is we're listing their name. This is the name, and this is their number. So when we did this, and we went and we looked at the different pre-cycles, and we'll explain a little bit more in the pre-cycles as we go. I just want to show you the connection of the pre-cycle and their number, which corresponds to eclipses. Okay, so what you can see is there's a priest. He serves for 1 week. Remember how he serves 1 day? So there's a week, and then during that week, there's an eclipse. And what happens is we can see a sequence. You can see the number 3, 4, 3, 5, 4. So they seem to move in a sequence. Now there's 24 of these, okay, and they correspond to every 6 months, okay. So, but what happens is they do move, they do progress, okay. So you can see the numbers moving. So then 5, 4, 6, 7, 6, 8. Okay, so then they begin to move. Now, once we get to the blood moons, okay, we have the blood moons taking place, the 4 lunar tetrad, 2014. Now we're at number 7. So these continue in an order, in a sequence with the eclipses. Okay, so these are the eclipses, and during that week, that eclipse, there is a priest serving. So what happens is, as we go through them, these go through, as you can see, a number of years, and we've charted this out all the way up to 2024 right here. Okay, see that? And they continue in a sequence all the way to the 24th priest. So there's a total of 24, and we get right to the 24th one on this one, October 2nd, 2024. And again, these are the 22 almond blossoms on the menorah. So what just happened? Okay, we saw in 6 months. So we saw in Genesis 5 is giving us 6 months. 182 days is the Enoch calendar over 6 months. We saw the equinoxes. The distance between the spring equinox and the fall equinox is 187 days. Okay, so the Enoch calendar, you keep track of the solar cycle and the lunar cycle. Okay, so that's why we have the understanding of the eclipses, because we also see that Enoch describes it. So then we take 187, or we take 364 minus 187. Now we have the lunar cycle of 177 days over 6 months. Okay, and then there's a sequence of those. On average, it's 187 4 times, right? We saw 4 eclipses, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then the 4th one is 162 days. Okay, and then it goes again, 177, 177, 162. Okay, so these are coded in the genealogy in Genesis chapter 5. So we have an eclipse procession taking place, a lunar cycle. Okay, so that's what it's showing us in Genesis 5 when we look at these numbers. That's what 177 means. That's what 162 means. Okay, now there's more. So we can see the age of, this is Jared, this is Noah. Okay, and these are the age that they lived. Now, if we get to Jared, Jared lived 962 years. Now, we have another significant number here. You can see it's the number 37. And if we take 962 divided by 26, it's 37. Now, this is Lamech. Lamech lived 777 years. Okay, so 777 divided by 37 is 21. Now, interesting enough, we find Noah lived 950 years. Well, if we take 364 multiplied by 2, 728. We subtract from 950, we get 222. So now we have a 777. We have a 222. I know a lot of times you guys see numbers. Oh, I keep seeing numbers. All right. What is 222? Well, it's a lot of things, but you can see here it relates to Noah. And again, 222 divided by 37 is 6. So what is the prophetic meaning? What is the interpretation of the number 777 and 222? Basically what it's telling us judgment before the millennium. Now, the number 777, you see right here, 777, relates to the millennium. Yes, there's a millennium. That's what we're talking about in this video. Is the millennium left Jesus Christ? There will be kings and priests. Okay, so you can see, so Lamech lived 777 years. What does that mean? Well, it means that that's the entering in of the millennium. So it was Noah that entered the millennium. So Lamech died precisely before the flood, at or before the flood, okay? Noah passed through. So he passed through the other side, entered the new era, the new millennium, the new 777. Now we saw that Noah was attributed to the number 222. Well, 222 relates to the second millennium. So in the second millennium, there was a judgment, okay, and then there was a rest. Noah's name means rest. And rest is like the millennium, or entering a new era. Okay, so the judgment takes place, okay, and then you enter a new era. So our number before that we saw, 37, okay, 37, if you multiply 37 by 3, 6, 9, 12, etc., you can see you multiply 37 times 3, 111, 222. Okay, so the first millennium is 111. Noah lived in the 222. Okay, so he lived in the 222, and that was a time of the same pattern of judgment taking place, then entering rest. Okay, and then Lamech, he lived 777 years as a type of the future, the seventh millennium. Okay, so that's the 222 and the 777. Now you also notice the other numbers, 21 and 6. Okay, now the 24 priests, they go through a series, 1 through 24, in the courses. And in the first week of the first month, which we began in 2014 with number 3. Now, there was a reason in the Dead Sea Scrolls where they started number 3. I can't remember it right now, but it starts with number 3. Okay? But number 3 makes sense because if we take 3 and we multiply it by 37, it's what? 111. Just like 6 times 37 is 222. 3 times 37 is 111. So that's our first cycle, okay? So in the first year, our first year of the calendar was 2014. Our first, in order of the priesthood, was actually number 3. And then what we learn, of course, is after 5 years, we add 7 days. And we go through a procession of these courses. So then we go, after 5 years, we go to priest course 24. So the priest course of 24 would then appear on the first week of the first month. So let's look at the years. So we can see here the year 2014. Our first priest course was the number 3. In 2015, in the first week, in the first month, okay, was number 7. So you see, you go 3, 7, 11, 15, 19, then 24. So these are 5 years. So every 5 years, you can see it goes from pre-course 2014, 3, pre-course 2019, 24. So it's moving back, okay? And 2024, it's 21, 18, 15, 12, 9, 6, and back to 3. So after that period of time, the priest courses would have concluded. So I only found this out today. However, this other page I did years ago. Amazing. And look it, here they are, guys. Watch this. So the priest course for our first year is number 3. Remember how we saw that? But then it goes backwards. But watch what it does. So you got 3, and then the next one is 24. Okay? And then the next one is 21. That's what we saw, our 777. Okay? And then the next one is, okay, 18. 18 times 37 is 666. So it's in the 6th millennium of the beast, 666, okay? We have to overcome the beast. And then we go back 15. 15 times 37 is 555, okay? And then we continue. We go from 15, we go back, go 12 times 37, 444, etc. Okay? Guys, I drew this years ago, and I was astonished to see today this lined up perfectly. Now, the other thing you can see here is, remember the priest, it said they served in the temple every 7 days. Remember how it said they serve in the northeast, south, and west? Well, you can also see that with this pattern. You can also position it in a way where you can see these are gates. Okay, so you have east, west, north, south. Okay, so now if you just turn it, now you can see east, west, south, north. That's exactly what we saw. Remember here, the 24 elders, they serve 7 days, east, west, north, south. So this is amazing, guys. We have the proper order, the proper download of the proper time. And I am honored to do this. I'm astounded to know this information. This is the order of the 24 elders in the book of Revelation. They're called the sons of Zadok. It's the Enoch calendar, guys. It's the only way you're going to understand the things you're seeing here. So this is part of this series we've been doing. I encourage you to go back over the other videos. We'll make all these notes available to you. But remember how they have to keep the Sabbath. Okay, in the millennium you have the feast, you have the cycles, you have the Sabbaths. We showed you the Sabbaths. Okay, we showed you before. I encourage you to go over this one again, proving the Enoch calendar in Genesis 5. Okay, and the other councils. This is amazing information, guys. The only thing I notice a lot, and we'll have some more on the menorah and the candlestick. We believe that's important. So, guys, all I could say is Jesus Christ is coming back in the clouds soon, okay? And we want to prepare for his coming. We want to prepare for this new era, this new time, okay? So, guys, thanks for watching, and God bless you.